On New York's Long Island, Massapequa High School is the home of the Chiefs. And to go with that name, the school also has a tribal inspired logo and mascot. The state's Department of Education does not approve of that. And they've threatened the school could lose state funding if it does not stop using Native American references. Well, President Trump and the federal education department. The president weighed in on social media in April to call New York's opposition an affront to our great Indian population. He then put his education secretary, Linda McMahon, on the case, and she visited the school Friday. Secretary McMahon announced that the department will investigate whether it's state education officials who are actually being discriminatory by threatening funding over the name and imagery.
We absolutely did find that this is a civil rights violation here in Massapequa. The State Board of Education and to the Board of Regents, we would like to have you voluntarily come sign the resolution that would allow the Chiefs to continue.
Jermaine Smith is the former general counsel and secretary of the Shinnecock Indian Nation in New York. He's also advised the New York Department of Education on mascot restrictions. Sir, thanks for being with me. First, what's your reaction, your response to what you heard there from Secretary McMahon?
Well, thank you for having me on this morning. It's almost laughable and disgraceful, those comments about it being discriminatory. The Shinnecock Nation and other tribal nations in New York State, we've had our share of issues with New York State ourselves, but the New York State Education Department has been a partner to the Shinnecock Nation, and all of Dr. Betty Rosa, Chancellor Young, Assistant Commissioner David Frank, Anel Alstead with MBK. They have been partners with tribal nations around the state. Clarissa Jacobs, Christina Coughlin, they all, the education department as a whole, and they got it exactly right. And the United States Education Department has it exactly wrong in this case.
Okay, so when she says that it is the state that's being discriminatory, help me see the other side of this. What is the impact of the imagery of the mascots on Indigenous people and children specifically?
So when I got involved in education, obviously, as most do, it's for the well-being of the children. And in my particular case, being a tribal leader on Shinnecock Nation, my focus was the well-being of our Shinnecock children. And we performed poorly in our local school district for many years. Part of that is the generational trauma and the psyche of our Shinnecock children and Native children all around the country who believe that we don't exist anymore. It's a part of it. And that imagery looks at us and speaks to us as a stereotype. We all look the same. We all wear headdresses. That's not true. We come in all different shapes and sizes. And my own daughters have said to me, Dad, we still exist. Why are we being used as mascots? So that's the harmful effect that it has, and I speak from experience on that. So to say that the Massapequa School District is being discriminated against is absolutely laughable.
And part of the case that they make about this being discrimination against the district is because they say that the state allows other names derived from groups like the Dutchmen and the Huguenots. What do you make of that comparison, that to have a team called the Dutchmen is no different than having the Chiefs and that imagery in Massapequa?
Well, I don't know about you, but I've never been on a train with a Dutchman or a Huguenot or sat next to one in a restaurant. But every day, you may not know it, but you probably pass a Native and Indigenous person in New York State. And so it's hurtful to us. It's absolutely not the same thing. And I can't even speak to those other mascot issues, but when it comes to Indigenous people, We don't like being portrayed as a mascot, as a thing of the past.
Jermaine Smith, I thank you for your time this morning. This week, the Supreme Court declined to stop a land transfer in Arizona that will lead to the destruction of a site sacred to Native Americans. The Western Apache people say they've practiced religious ceremonies at the site known as Oak Flat for centuries. The fight over the land started more than a decade ago. Now, in 2014, Congress approved the transfer of the federal property in the Tonto National Forest to the company Resolution Copper. President Trump initiated the exchange in the final days of his first term. And in 2021, the nonprofit Apache Stronghold sued. They said the transfer violated the First Amendment's free exercise clause and a law that requires courts to apply the highest level of scrutiny to any law that burdens religious freedom. It argued that the decision could lead to tearing apart federal religious protections in other situations. Well, last year, the Ninth Circuit of Appeals ruled that the transfer is not subject to federal laws protecting religious freedom. And Wednesday, the court declined to review the case, with Justices Clarence Thomas and Neil Gorsuch dissenting. Gorsuch called the decision not to hear the case a grievous mistake. Here's what he wrote. Just imagine if the government sought to demolish a historic cathedral on so questionable a chain of legal reasoning. I have no doubt that we would find that case worth our time. Faced with the government's plan to destroy an ancient site of tribal worship, we owe the Apaches no less. Wensler Nosey Sr. is a leader of Apache Stronghold, the organization that filed the suit, and he lives on Oak Flat. Thank you for being with me. First, I need some context and perspective here so that I and the audience understand the severity of what is going to happen. What does Oak Flat mean to Native people, especially the Western Apache?
Well, again, thank you this morning for being on with you. First of all, it's our identity. It's who we are and what we were created to be on this earth. And so it begins with the creation of Mother Earth. And it's installed into our children to become who we are today. And so by eliminating this place, you're eliminating what God had touched the earth on this part of the world with. And so it's going to be completely devastating if this occurs, because now you're going to have not only you will be having like a mental, social effects. And then as far as how the Mother Earth is intertwined with who we are as Native people. So it's going to be a devastating effect, because this is really like the last root of Native people in this country is our religion, and it's our identity and who we are. And so that's what is really at stake about what the past is and what the future is going to be.
Yeah, I read that there are some religious ceremonies that happen only at Oak Flat. And so if Oak Flat is then transferred and then is mined for copper, do those traditions just disappear? I mean, they cannot happen anywhere else?
Well, it totally disappears, because again, in this particular place is where we have angels, just like the Bible talks about angels. It's the same thing. Native Americans still exercises those ancient religions that was given to us from the Creator. And so when this place goes, that also goes. And that's why it's an important topic to all religious groups here in America.
Let me read for you the finding from the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals in San Francisco, that the land transfer did not impose a substantial burden on religious exercise. And they say that's because it doesn't coerce or discriminate on the basis of religion. What's your reaction, your response to that scope, that because it doesn't coerce, it doesn't discriminate, it's not applicable?
Well, that's really an untrue statement, because if you look at what the environment does, as far as when we talk about 80% of water, when you talk about human beings tied to the land, when you talk about, what the religious practice is. And like I was telling a lot of Christian people around the country, is that it's no different than the beginning of the Bible, or where the Bible actually comes from. So, that's why these laws in America needs to be changed. That's why these consultations that they have with Native American people are so critical. And then also having the right people at the table. And so it's going to really be detrimental, not just to us Native people, but to the country itself, because you're talking about the environment. When you talk about religion and environment, they go hand in hand. So it's going to be a disaster thing that the United States is walking into.
I wonder, is there some special significance of it not just being transferred, but transferred for mining?
Well, When you come back to who owns, I mean, you're talking about two foreign mining companies. You're talking about Chinaco, a government state entity that's going to control, this area. So if you look at the profits and you look at what they're after, then versus what religion is, there's an unbalance because religion and the earth itself and the water pockets, I mean, that's forever and ever if we take care of it. So this is why the NEPA was very critical in the 2014 when John McCain gave the exemption because it totally wiped that out. So you would clearly see the unbalance, of what this land base is all about, from religion to the future of the country.
Winslow Nosey Sr., thank you so much for explaining it to us, and thank you for your time.